Ambassador Zix Theta floated gracefully through the crystalline corridors of the Galactic Council's headquarters, her translucent tentacles rippling with nervous energy. Today marked the 5-year anniversary of humanity's acceptance into the Galactic Federation, and she had been assigned as their cultural liaison. The humans seemed pleasant enough, always smiling, always eager to help. Perhaps too eager, she thought, suppressing an involuntary shudder. The meeting hall buzzed with representatives from 100 different worlds. The Calarians chirped from their perches high above, their feathered forms catching the artificial sunlight. The stone-like granitors rumbled in their corner, discussing mining rights in their deep, grinding language. And there, at the center of it all, stood the human delegation. They looked so harmless. Zix Theta mused. Soft pink skin without any natural armor. No claws, no fangs visible when they smiled. Their ambassador, a middle-aged woman named Sarah Chen, was sharing photos of something called puppies with the Verdanian ambassador, whose plant-like form swayed with what appeared to be delight. Remarkable species, clicked Cathar, the insectoid security chief, as he approached Zix Theta. His compound eyes reflected her image 1,000 times over. 5 years, and not a single incident. They've integrated better than any species in recent memory. Zix Theta's chromatophores flickered agreement, though something nagged at her consciousness. Yes, remarkable. Did you review their history files? Briefly, Cathar admitted, his mandibles clicking dismissively. Seemed rather mundane. Some internal conflicts. But what species doesn't have those? Before Zix Theta could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The lights shifted to emergency amber, and every screen in the hall displayed the same message. Pirate attack, Sector 7. The assembled delegates erupted in panic. The mellowings began secreting their fear pheromones, causing several species to gag. The Crystalline Collective's members literally shattered from stress, requiring immediate reconstruction. But Zix Theta noticed something odd. The humans hadn't moved. They stood perfectly still, their heads tilted slightly, as if listening to something only they could hear. "Sarah!" Zix Theta called out, fighting through the crowd. "Ambassador Chen, we need to evacuate to the emergency shelters." Sarah turned to her, and for just a moment, Zix Theta saw something in the human's eyes that made her freeze. It was gone in an instant, replaced by that familiar warm smile. "How many pirate vessels?" Sarah asked calmly, pulling out her communication device. "T-12," Zix Theta stammered, checking her own display. "The Crimson Claw Fleet. They've been terrorizing this sector for decades. The station's defenses won't hold for long." Sarah nodded, then spoke quietly into her device. "This is Ambassador Chen. Execute Protocol 7. Yes, all of them. No survivors." The other humans in the delegation had formed a tight circle, their pleasant demeanors unchanged, but something in their posture had shifted. They moved with a coordination that seemed almost military. "What's Protocol 7?" Zix Theta asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "Just a little defensive measure," Sarah replied. "We've had 5 years to prepare, after all. Did you really think we'd leave Earth's new allies unprotected?" Through the massive viewports, space erupted in violence. But it wasn't the pirate attack everyone had expected. Ships appeared as if from nowhere, human ships, painted matte black, almost invisible against the void. They moved unlike anything Zix Theta had ever seen, defying physics with impossible maneuvers. The pirates, who had terrorized the galaxy for longer than some civilizations had existed, didn't stand a chance. The human ships didn't just destroy them. They dismantled them, piece by piece, with surgical precision. Zix Theta watched in horror as escape pods were specifically targeted and eliminated. "No survivors," Sarah had said. She had meant it. Around them, the panic in the hall had transformed into stunned silence. Every species watched as humanity revealed a glimpse of what lay beneath their friendly exterior. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 3 minutes. Cathar's compound eyes had gone completely black, a sign of extreme distress in his species. How did they get those ships here without us detecting them? Sarah's smile never wavered. Oh, they've been here all along. Cloaked, of course. We have similar defensive positions around every major Federation world. Just in case. Just in case of what? The question came from Ambassador Threck of the Granitors, his rocky form grinding with agitation. In case someone threatens our friends, Sarah replied simply. We take friendship very seriously. The human ships were already vanishing back into the void, disappearing as suddenly as they had appeared. The debris field that had once been the Crimson Claw fleet drifted silently, a testament to humanity's hidden capabilities. Zixa Theta found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Your history files, they were edited, weren't they? Sarah's expression softened, becoming almost sympathetic. Not edited, just abbreviated. We didn't want to alarm anyone with the full details. Did you know that humans are one of the only species that evolved as persistence predators? We would chase prey for days until they died of exhaustion. We're also one of the few species that practices war as an art form, that has words for concepts like genocide and total war, because we've done them so often we needed names for them. The security chief Cathar backed away slowly. The pirates, you didn't just defeat them, you hunted them. Every last one, Sarah confirmed. They made a mistake threatening this station, threatening our friends. You see, humans have a saying, demons run when a good man goes to war. We've been very, very good for the past 5 years, but we're still human. The aftermath of the attack spread through the galactic community like wildfire. The Crimson Claw had been more than just pirates. They had been a symbol of the chaos that even the mighty Galactic Federation couldn't fully control, and humanity had erased them in minutes. In her private quarters that night, Zixa Theta pulled up humanity's unedited history files using her new clearance codes that Sarah had quietly provided. What she read made her chromophores cycle through colors her species hadn't displayed since their prehistoric days when they were prey animals. Wars that had killed millions. Weapons that could crack atoms and poison worlds. They had turned their own planet's atmosphere toxic, then fixed it, then nearly destroyed it again. They had practiced warfare on each other for millennia, perfecting the art of destruction to a degree that no other Federation species had even imagined. But what terrified her most were the psychological profiles. Humans could love with an intensity that defied reason, but that same emotional depth meant they could hate just as powerfully. They formed pack bonds with anything, their own species, other creatures, even inanimate objects, and they would destroy anything that threatened those bonds. The next morning, Zix Theta found Sarah in the observation lounge, watching Earth's blue marble hanging in the distance. The human was sipping something called coffee, a beverage that Zix Theta had learned was essentially poison to most species, but which humans consumed for pleasure. I read the files, Zix Theta said without preamble. Sarah nodded, unsurprised. And? Why show us this side of yourselves? You had successfully hidden it for 5 years. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Because the galaxy needs to understand what humans really are. We're not the harmless, helpful species you thought we were. We're predators who chose to be shepherds. We're monsters who decided to be protectors. But make no mistake, the monster is always there, waiting. The other species will fear you now. Good, Sarah said simply. Fear keeps everyone honest. But they'll also know that as long as they're our allies, as long as they're under our protection, that monster will never be directed at them. We'll be the thing that other monsters fear. Zix Theta's tentacles curled in thought. And if someone betrays that alliance? Sarah's smile was different this time, showing teeth. Then they'll learn why humans are the only species in the galaxy with a word for apocalypse in every one of our languages. As news of the incident spread, the galaxy's perception of humanity underwent a fundamental shift. The helpful, smiling humans were still there, still eager to trade and share and learn. But now everyone knew what lurked beneath those smiles. They had invited monsters into their midst, thinking them harmless. The real horror wasn't that humans were monsters. It was that they were monsters who had learned to hide it so perfectly, who could choose when to let it show. They were predators who had evolved beyond the need for claws and fangs because they had something far more dangerous: intelligence coupled with the capacity for unlimited violence. And somewhere in the void, cloaked human ships maintained their silent vigil around every Federation world, waiting, always waiting, because humans had decided that the galaxy was under their protection now, whether the galaxy liked it or not. The day the galaxy realized humans were just monsters in disguise was also the day they realized something far more terrifying. These monsters had chosen to be their guardians. And gods help anyone who threatened what humans had decided to protect. 3 months had passed since the Crimson Claw incident, and the Galactic Federation found itself in an unprecedented situation. Every diplomatic meeting now carried an undercurrent of tension whenever human representatives were present. The smiles were still there, the helpful attitude remained unchanged, but now everyone knew what those smiles could hide. In the depths of space, aboard the research vessel Curious Dream, a mixed crew of Federation scientists worked on what should have been a routine survey mission. Among them was Dr. James Wright, a human xenobiologist who had been nothing but pleasant and professional for the entire 2-year mission. His crewmates had grown comfortable with him, almost forgetting the revelations about humanity. Almost. The ship's captain, a cephalopod from Aquaris Prime named Queltar, observed Wright analyzing samples in the lab. The human hummed something he called classic rock while he worked, occasionally making jokes that the universal translator struggled to convey properly. "James," Queltar ventured, his chromatophores displaying cautious curiosity. "May I ask you something personal?" Wright looked up, his eyes crinkling with that distinctly human expression of friendliness. "Sure, Captain. What's on your mind?" "The Crimson Claw incident. How do you feel about it?" The human's expression didn't change, but something in the air seemed to shift. He set down his instruments carefully. "How do I feel? Relieved, I suppose. They won't be hurting anyone else. But the complete annihilation—" "Captain, have you ever studied Earth's ecosystems?" Wright asked, seemingly changing the subject. "We have these creatures called orcas. Beautiful, intelligent, playful. They're loved by humans, featured in our entertainment, protected by our laws. Do you know what their scientific name translates to?" Queltar's tentacles curled in a negative gesture. "Demon from the depths," Wright continued. "Because when they hunt, they're absolutely ruthless. They'll play with their prey, torture it, kill it slowly, but they're still beautiful, still worthy of protection. Humans are like that. We can be your best friends or your worst nightmares. The Crimson Claw chose to make themselves our enemy. That was their mistake." Before Queltar could respond, alarms shrieked through the ship. The lights flickered and died, emergency power casting everything in a dim red glow. "What's happening?" Wright asked, but his entire demeanor had already changed. The friendly scientist was gone, replaced by something alert and predatory. The ship's AI crackled to life. "Unknown energy signature detected. Systems compromised. Unable to identify—" The message cut off abruptly. Through the viewports, space itself seemed to ripple. Something massive materialized from nothing. A ship, but unlike anything in Federation databases. It was organic-looking, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. By the depths, Queltar whispered. The Devourers. They're just legends. Stories to frighten younglings. Wright had already moved to the emergency supply locker, pulling out items with practiced efficiency. Not legends, then. Tell me about them. Quickly. They're said to consume entire civilizations, absorb their technology, their knowledge, their very essence. But they haven't been seen for millennia. They can't be real. The ship shuddered as something attached to their hull. Wright strapped various tools to his body, his movements economical and precise. They're real enough. How many crew aboard? 37. But James, we're scientists, not soldiers. We can't— I'm not just a scientist, Wright interrupted. None of us are. Every human in space is trained for this. Get everyone to the emergency shelter in Section C. Seal the doors. Don't open them for anything until I give you the all clear. What are you going to do? Wright smiled, and Queltar finally understood why other species found human smiles so disturbing. Too many teeth. What humans do best. We're going to have a conversation. The next hour became a legend whispered throughout the galaxy. Security footage, recovered later, showed Wright moving through the ship's corridors like a specter. The Devourers had sent boarding parties, creatures of shifting flesh and adaptive biology, absorbing everything they touched. They had consumed civilizations far more advanced than the Federation. They had never encountered humans before. Wright didn't fight them in any conventional sense. He hunted them. Using the ship's environmental controls, he created killing grounds. He turned the artificial gravity into a weapon, crushing some invaders while launching others into improvised traps. When they adapted to his tactics, he adapted faster. The xenobiologist's lab became a chamber of horrors. Wright synthesized toxins from his research samples, created acids that ate through the Devourer's adaptive biology faster than they could evolve counters. He used his knowledge of life to deal death with an efficiency that was terrifying in its creativity. But the most disturbing part was his commentary, picked up by the ship's internal sensors. He talked to the Devourers as he killed them, his tone conversational, almost friendly. You know, on Earth we have something called the Geneva Convention, he said, rigging an electrical trap from the ship's power grid. Rules of warfare. Things you're not supposed to do to enemies. But you're not enemies, are you? You're pests. And we have different rules for pest control. A Devourer burst through a wall, its form a writhing mass of tentacles and teeth. Wright didn't flinch. He threw a canister that exploded into foam on contact. The creature shrieked as the foam hardened, trapping it. That's a little something I whipped up from cleaning supplies and engine coolant, Wright explained calmly, injecting something into the trapped creature. The injection? That's going to rewrite your biological code. Your own adaptive nature will spread it to your friends when they try to absorb you. Think of it as aggressive cancer. You're welcome. The creature's shriek turned into something else as its body began consuming itself. Wright had already moved on. The boarding party leader, a massive creature that had absorbed technologies and abilities from countless species, finally confronted Wright in the main cargo bay. It spoke with 1,000 voices, offering absorption, immortality, the knowledge of galaxies. I have a counteroffer, Wright said, holding up a simple device. You leave, now, or I activate this. What is that weapon? The creature demanded, its form shifting uneasily. It's not a weapon, it's a transmitter. One button, and every human ship within 50 light-years will converge on this position. They'll bring weapons you can't adapt to because we'll keep making new ones. They'll bring plagues designed just for you. They'll bring warriors who make me look like a pacifist. And they'll follow you wherever you run. Forever. Because that's what humans do when you threaten our pack. You're bluffing, Wright shrugged. Maybe. Want to find out? We turned our homeworld into a garden world after nearly destroying it. We split atoms for power after using them for bombs. We cured diseases after weaponizing them. We're very good at breaking things, but we're even better at breaking things that threaten our friends. For the first time in eons, a devourer experienced something it had absorbed from countless species but never felt itself: fear. "You're monsters," it accused. "Yes," Wright agreed simply. "But we're monsters who chose to be scientists, teachers, healers. We chose to explore rather than conquer, to protect rather than destroy. But make no mistake, that's a choice, one we make every day. And you're making it very difficult for me to keep choosing to be nice." The standoff stretched for long minutes. Then, impossibly, the devourer began to retreat. It and its remaining spawn detached from the ship, their massive vessel beginning to phase out of normal space. "This isn't over," it promised. "No," Wright agreed. "But it is for today, and if you're smart, you'll make it forever. Because humans have a saying: no matter how deep you bury the hatchet, you always remember where you put it. We'll be watching for you." After they were gone, Wright made his way to the emergency shelter, keying in the all clear. The crew emerged, staring at him with expressions that mixed awe and terror. "The ship is clear," he reported to Captain Queltar. "We'll need some repairs, but everyone's safe." "James, Dr. Wright." "What are you?" Wright considered the question, then sighed. "I'm exactly what I've always been. A scientist who loves his job and values his crewmates. But I'm also human. We're all dual-natured. We build and we destroy. We heal and we harm. We chose to join the Federation because we wanted to be builders, to be healers. But when something threatens what we're building, what we're healing," he shrugged, "we remember how to be destroyers." The news of the encounter spread through subspace communications within days. A single human scientist had repelled a devourer boarding party, creatures that had consumed entire civilizations. He had done it not with advanced weapons or military training, but with creativity, adaptability, and a willingness to become whatever monster was necessary to protect his crew. Federation analysts pored over the footage, trying to understand. The human had gone from jokes about rock music to orchestrating elaborate death traps in seconds. He had shown affection for his crewmates, then shown the devourers why human affection was perhaps the most dangerous force in the galaxy. On Earth, the reaction was simpler. James Wright received a commendation for protecting Federation citizens. There was no mention of his methods, no inquiry into the weapons he had improvised. As far as humanity was concerned, he had done what any human would do, whatever was necessary. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The topic: how to handle humanity's integration given these new revelations. Some species called for restrictions, for monitoring, for safeguards. Others, particularly those from regions plagued by pirates or hostile entities, called for deeper alliances with Earth. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the assembly, her expression patient. When the arguments finally died down, she spoke. "You want to know what humans are? We're survivors. For millions of years, we survived predators, disasters, ice ages, and each other. We survived by being adaptable, by being clever, by being willing to do whatever it took. But survival isn't enough anymore. We want to thrive. We want to explore, to learn, to grow. And we want to do it with all of you." "But you're killers," accused the representative from Pacifica, a world that had achieved spaceflight without ever developing weapons. "Yes," Chen agreed without hesitation. "We're killers who choose not to kill. We're destroyers who choose to create. We're monsters who choose to be kind. That choice is what defines us. But threaten our friends, our allies, our pack? Then yes, we'll be killers. We'll be the best killers the galaxy has ever seen, because that's how we protect what we love." The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion was foregone. Humanity was too valuable as an ally and too dangerous as an enemy. The Federation would adapt to having monsters as members. They had no choice. In the months that followed, a new understanding emerged. Human colonies began receiving requests for protection details, Worlds plagued by raiders found their problems mysteriously disappearing. Pirates and hostile entities learned to check ship registries for human crew members before attacking. The monsters had integrated into galactic society not by hiding their nature, but by channeling it. They became the Federation's antibodies, the immune system response to external threats. They remained scientists and traders, artists and explorers. But everyone knew that beneath the surface, the monster waited. 5 years after the Crimson Claw incident, 10 years after humanity joined the Galactic Federation, the universe faced its darkest hour. The Void Hunters had come, an ancient threat from beyond the galactic rim that even the oldest civilizations spoke of only in whispers. They were not conquerors or devourers. They were erasers, leaving nothing but empty space where thriving star systems once existed. The Federation's combined fleet gathered at Sentinel Station, the last line of defense before the core worlds. 300 species, 10,000 ships, 1,000,000 different weapons and shield configurations. It wasn't enough. Everyone knew it wasn't enough. Admiral Catherine Pierce stood on the human command ship Perseverance, reviewing battle plans with her multi-species staff. The human contingent was small, only 50 ships compared to the thousands from other races, but every other admiral kept glancing at her, waiting. "The Void Hunters will reach effective range in 6 hours," reported the crystalline tactical officer, its form flickering with anxiety. "Our models show a 0% chance of victory with conventional tactics." "Then we don't use conventional tactics," Pierce said calmly. She turned to her aide. "Send the Prometheus Protocol to all human vessels. Authorization, Pierce Alpha Omega." Across the assembled fleet, confusion rippled as the human ships began to pull back, forming a separate formation behind the main force. Angry communications flooded in from other fleet commanders. "You're abandoning us?" The mellowing admiral's pheromones were detectable even through the video link, broadcasting betrayal and fear. Pierce's expression didn't change. "We're not abandoning anyone. We're about to show you why humans are classified as a Death World species. I need you to trust us. Can you do that?" The lead elements of the Void Hunter fleet emerged from hyperspace like tears in reality itself. They were geometrically impossible, shapes that hurt to perceive directly. Where their weapons touched, matter simply ceased to exist. No debris, no energy discharge, just nothingness. The Federation fleet opened fire with everything they had. Weapons that could crack moons, energy beams that could sterilize planets, exotic matter projectiles that violated several laws of physics. The Void Hunters moved through it all like it was rain, their null weapons erasing ships with casual indifference. "Human fleet, what are you waiting for?" The desperation in the communications was palpable now. "For you to see," Pierce replied. "All human vessels, drop masks. Show them who we really are." The 50 human ships shimmered and changed. The pleasant, unassuming vessels they had shown the galaxy transformed. What emerged were things that shouldn't exist, ships that looked like they had been designed by nightmares and built in hell. Every surface bristled with weapons, some recognizable, most not. They radiated aggression like heat. But it was what happened next that made the galaxy truly understand what they had allied with. The human ships began to sing. It wasn't a sound, exactly. It was a broadcast on every frequency, every wavelength, even directly into the quantum foam of space itself. It was the song of a species that had crawled out of the mud, looked at the stars, and decided to own them. It was the battle cry of a race that had turned murder into science and warfare into art. The Void Hunters, for the first time in their eons of existence, paused. "What are they doing?" someone whispered over the comms. "Being human," Pierce answered. "All ships execute Berserker Protocol." Let's remind the universe why our ancestors were afraid of the dark. What followed defied every principle of civilized warfare the Federation had established. The human ships didn't fight the Void Hunters. They went to war with them. Each ship fought like it was personally offended by the enemy's existence. They rammed when their weapons were depleted. They detonated their cores to take enemies with them. They fought with a fury that transcended logic or self-preservation. But the truly terrifying part was the coordination. Even as individual ships fought like rabid animals, the fleet moved with a collective intelligence that was almost hive-like. They identified patterns in the Void Hunter movements, adapted to their tactics in real time, evolved counters to weapons that had never been countered before. One human destroyer, the last light of Terra, lost all its conventional weapons to a null beam. Its crew's response was to accelerate to near-light speed and use the ship itself as a kinetic weapon, the relativistic mass turning it into something that could hurt even a Void Hunter. As it died, it transmitted its sensor data to the rest of the fleet, each ship learning from its sacrifice. The Federation watched in horrified awe as humanity revealed its greatest secret. They were not just monsters. They were monsters who had industrialized monstrosity, who had made an art form of violence, who had spent their entire existence practicing for this moment. "My God," breathed the Aquaros Admiral. "They're enjoying this." He was right. The human battle chatter, accidentally broadcast on open channels, was full of dark humor and competitive scoring. They were treating the annihilation of an unstoppable force like a sporting event. "Johnson's up to 6 kills. Someone tell the Ragnarok to step up their game." "Negative. Ragnarok is busy. They're playing chicken with a dreadnought." Did they win? Define winning. Pierce stood unmoved at the center of the chaos, directing the human forces with cold precision. When aides reported losses, she simply nodded and adjusted tactics. She was playing four-dimensional chess with lives as pieces, and she was winning. The turning point came when the human science vessel Einstein's Revenge deployed something called a causal weapon. Reality hiccuped. Suddenly, several Void Hunter ships existed in the same space at the same time, their own existence annihilating them. The humans had weaponized paradoxes. How? The Federation observers couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. "The energy requirements alone." "We've been preparing," Pierce said simply. "Ever since we discovered we weren't alone in the universe, we've been preparing for the worst possible scenario. Every human ship carries weapons we hope never to use. Every human in space knows that we might be the last line of defense. We've been monsters pretending to be civilized. Today, we stop pretending." The Void Hunters, faced with an enemy that matched their nihilism with targeted insanity, began to falter. They had erased civilizations that begged, that fought with honor, that tried to reason or flee. They had never faced a species that saw them as a challenge to be overcome through sheer, bloody-minded determination. The flagship of the human fleet, humanity's vengeance, engaged the Void Hunter command vessel directly. The battle between them was less a fight and more a mutual attempt at annihilation. Both ships tore at reality itself, using weapons that shouldn't exist, tactics that violated causality, strategies that required a species-wide death wish to even conceive. In the end, it was humanity's willingness to sacrifice everything that made the difference. Captain Rodriguez of humanity's vengeance made the final call. "All hands, this is the captain. It's been an honor. Initiating Samson Protocol." The human flagship exploded, but it wasn't a normal explosion. They had turned their entire ship into a temporal bomb, scattering pieces of the Void Hunter command ship across 1,000,000 years. Parts of it existed in the past, parts in the future, none in the present. The paradox of its existence tore a wound in space that consumed the remaining Void Hunter fleet. As suddenly as it had begun, the battle was over. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever known had been stopped, not by superior technology or clever diplomacy, but by a species willing to become worse monsters than their enemies. The aftermath was silence. The Federation fleet, largely intact thanks to human sacrifice, drifted among the debris of their protectors. Of the 50 human ships, 8 remained, all heavily damaged. 42 crews had chosen death over defeat. Admiral Pierce finally allowed emotion to crack her voice. All Federation vessels, this is Admiral Pierce. The threat has been neutralized. Human medical ships are en route to assist with wounded. We won. At what cost? The question came from a dozen voices at once. The cost of survival, Pierce replied. It's a price humans have always been willing to pay. In the coming weeks, as the galaxy processed what had happened, a new understanding emerged. Humans weren't just monsters. They were the monsters the galaxy needed. They were the antibodies in the cosmic organism, the immune response to existential threats. The memorial service for the fallen was attended by representatives from every Federation world. As names were read, species that had never shown emotion in public wept. The humans had died not for Earth, but for worlds they had never seen, for species they had known for only a decade. Ambassador Chen spoke at the service. You call us monsters, and you're right. But we're your monsters now. We chose to be part of this Federation, to defend it, to die for it. Because humans don't just pack bond with our own kind. You're all part of our pack now, and we protect our pack. The Void Crisis, as historians would later call it, marked a fundamental shift in galactic politics. Some species still feared humans, but now it was the fear of a domesticated predator, dangerous but aimed outward. Military academies across the Federation began studying human tactics, not to counter them but to understand them. A new saying emerged among the spacefaring races. Pray you never see what humans can really do. But if the void comes calling, pray harder that you have humans on your side. Earth received delegations from grateful worlds, offerings of alliance and friendship deeper than mere political arrangements. The monsters had proven themselves, not by hiding their nature, but by choosing how to use it. In a quiet moment after the ceremonies, Zixatheta found Admiral Pierce standing alone at a viewport, looking out at the stars. Do you regret showing us what you really are? The alien asked. Pierce was quiet for a long moment. We've spent our entire history trying to be better than our nature. We created philosophies, religions, laws, all trying to contain the monster within, but maybe that was wrong. Maybe the point isn't to cage the monster. Maybe it's to aim it at the right targets. And if you run out of targets? Pierce smiled, and it was neither threatening nor comforting. It was simply human. Then we'll go back to being scientists and traders and artists. We'll help you build and grow and explore. We'll be good neighbors and loyal friends. But the monster will always be there, waiting, because that's what guardian monsters do. They wait. The galaxy had learned a fundamental truth. Humans were monsters. They were the things that went bump in the night, the predators that other predators feared. But they were monsters who had chosen to wear the mask of civilization, to channel their nature into protection rather than predation. They were proof that sometimes, to fight the darkness, you needed something darker on your side, something willing to become whatever horror was necessary to keep the light burning. The day the galaxy realized humans were just monsters in disguise was the day they realized they were grateful for it. Because in a universe full of threats, having monsters as friends was perhaps the greatest survival strategy of all. And somewhere in the void, other ancient threats stirred and considered their approach to the galaxy. Word spread through dimensions and dark spaces between stars. The humans were watching. The monsters had claimed this galaxy as their territory, their pack. For the first time in cosmic history, the darkness was afraid of what lurked in the light.